Claire, and welcome Claire, who is standing in for Cynthia. So fingers crossed everything went well for Cynthia. She had a small operation, or any operation, I suppose, is a big operation, but I don't know what time today, but I hope she's not watching this. I hope she hasn't dialed in. Knowing her, she probably would. And so Claire's going to keep an eye on the chat room, and I'm on my iPad. I'm in the middle of a 2-day workshop live with a group of women. So they've just gone to lunch, and this is my lunch, but I actually feel pretty good compared to how I felt yesterday. And I have great pleasure of introducing our guest today, Lisa Keedle, who you can see in screen. Now, have I pronounced that correctly or incorrectly?
Nice. Keedle's good. Well done.
Okay. So I'll just do a little bit of the housekeeping before we get into our conversation, and I'll just let everyone know I will then be running off at the end of the time to then jump back into my workshop. I've extended the lunch break for our gorgeous group of women. So this is episode 13, and we have travelled around Australia almost, finding women who are in regional, remote and rural Australia, and we are diving into generally their homes, somewhere in their home, and asking questions about their well-being. We created a little format to remind us to ask questions around what wisdom that they themselves have gathered along the way, what their purpose is about well-being, what if we had a video camera, what would we see you doing? Where do you get your energy from? And what's possibly a no-go zone that compromises your well-being? So there are quite a few questions there. And this week for episode 13, we might deviate off there given Lisa's background and experience. And I have a limited knowledge. I've tried to stalk you quite a bit in the short amount of time, but your bio does it justice, which has been great if those have had a chance to read it. So I'll get you at the beginning, Lisa, to tell us your backstory, and then we'll go from there. Depending on your the dashboard that you have on the device that you're using, Jenny, hopefully you've got your laptop. You looked very clear when I saw you before, but you'll find that somewhere on your device there'll be a dashboard. You can use the chat room, which Claire will keep an eye on. And so if you have any questions that you would like to ask specifically, Claire will help us out with that. The timing is generally the first quarter is about just getting on board and starting to find out about Lisa, and then we do a Q&A for 30 minutes and then a Q&A over to the rest of the group. However, as I've said to Claire, if you've got a burning question and we don't want to lose it, say that in the chat room and we'll get that asked straight away. This is really casual. This is your downtime in a sense, so we don't want to make it too onerous. There would be a Q&A option as well, and that's a direct question that I will, in particular, Claire and Lisa will see. So we make sure that we do ask those specific questions. They can be anonymous or with your name. As Claire said, we're recording it so that then it will be on Cynthia's website pretty quickly. I think, Claire, are you responsible for doing that type of activity, which is fabulous, so that you can go back and listen to that at any time. And also, Claire organises a transcription of it, so that's why we're able to put chunky pieces of information up about what was covered off. And in particular, at the end of the conversation, we will ask Lisa for her top 3 wellbeing tips, which we always share on all the socials. I think we might actually be able to jump into our conversation with Lisa, unless, Claire, you think there's anything I missed out?
Don't think so. We've got about 16 with us now. So.
Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. And I'm not looking at chat room, Claire would, but go ahead and let us know where you are zooming in from. And that's always great if Lisa can see that, to see how broad or far and wide that the audience is. And I'm the urban person here. I'm just on the outskirts of Melbourne, but as I always say, I'm surrounded by farms, and I have to keep my doors closed because I can hear all the cows mooing during the day, the cattle mooing. I was just thinking, yeah, so like, hello, Sally, who's been a previous speaker, guest of ours from Tasmania. We've got Benella. Claire, maybe if you just let us know, just other
we've got Louise Scott, who is our speaker a few weeks ago. We've got Susie Jacobs. Okay, you're going to test my Aussie pronunciation now. Ballandella
Wow.
in Victoria. Yeah, we've got East Coast Tasmania, Sally, who was also a speaker a couple of weeks ago. Helen Shaw in Romsey. Yeah, that's it for sharing for now.
And whilst we warm up and listen to Lisa's backstory, do let us know what practices that you've implemented, let's say in the last week, from our previous speaker or speakers. It's always great to know that you are not just listening, that you've actually experimented with what we have learnt from our guests. So that's really important for us to learn and understand. Okay, so are you ready, Lisa?
I think so. We'll see how we go.
Okay, so what I picked up, and I always think it's important that you really introduce yourself because you know you best, but you know the variety of roles that you have performed, and I now know acronym EM, Emergency Management, and that's appearing regularly. I think what's probably really caught our attention, and no doubt your attention, is your involvement with bushfires, which is so important for us. You know, COVID has taken over and we just haven't paid enough attention to people who have been affected, the broader community. The fact that you have been helping a year 12er in your family get through all this, that was, you know, the warning bells for me. We share yoga, and I practiced this morning, feeling much better this morning after doing that. You've been doing this bike riding, trail riding. That sounds great for well-being. And again, we share the baking. And I have shed my COVID-19 1.9 kilos so far because we've been eating too much here. But I've only just started to skim the surface. So do tell us your backstory.
I struggled to talk about myself. So this is really putting me out of my comfort zone. So I said yes to this. I think this is a learning. I said yes to this thinking that this is just way beyond what I could do, but I'll do my best. I think my background, my qualifications really started in agriculture. So, and I should talk about the fact that was my first point around my passion was agriculture. And I should say I'm calling in from Wurundjeri country. So I'm in the Yarra Valley, so a beautiful country that I have grown up on and born on. So that's really close to my heart in terms of my connection to where I live and where I've grown up. But so agriculture has always been my passion. I thought that'd be my life career when I was 23, 24. And then did that for a number of years, and then obviously our family arrived. So I have three now adult children, and so when looking to return to work, I returned to part-time work in agriculture, but then eventually sort of slowed down and started doing some consultancy work. So I was working in community engagement. So I'd started picking up some working for myself and juggling parenting at home and trying to navigate. So my career, I sort of decided would be go on hold for 8 years while I focused on being a primary carer for our kids. And which was a joy, so no regrets whatsoever. But during that time, I kind of learnt and picked up some other roles working for community engagement around bushfire education, and that was a really great sort of summertime gig. I really fitted in with my lifestyle and my passion for engaging people and informing people and working with my communities. So that was been amazing. And then around 2009, I was looking for more permanent work and took on a role working for the Country Fire Authority Interviewed 2 weeks before Black Saturday, and my first day back into that work was the Monday after Black Saturday. So I was employed to do agricultural doctrine and write the doctrine for agriculture across the state around fire safety, but actually end up morphing into reviewing the bushfire education programs, which I've been a part of delivering. And then part of an overall review in parallel to the Royal Commission. So it was a pretty hectic, the job I signed up for was not the job that I ended up doing in those first 2 years. So it was a very different environment and a very political environment, and a real growth and period for me in terms of navigating that. I don't think many people would kind of say that they'd sort of experienced work like that before. It's pretty unique. But there was real reward as much as there was real challenges, and I really struggled with my mental health during that first 12 months because my family were impacted by fires, my communities were impacted by fires, and people I'd worked with had lost their lives. So maintaining a level of professional standards while I did my work, as well as seeing the impact, was a real challenge. So that was my first foray into really understanding the benefits and the needs for my looking after myself and taking care of myself, and then taking care of my family, and then being able to work as well. So I think 2009 for me is a real seminal moment in my working and personal life. Aside from having children, of course, but having children's great. And then I sort of left that role, and again left and sort of was, my children were going into high school, and decided to kind of shift away from the kind of the high adrenaline work and look at working for myself, which I did. And I did more community engagement work, and I was again a consultant to work with mainly state government and local government around engagement for community safety aspects and a little bits of agriculture. So that was really fun. And then I saw a job advertised for local government working in emergency management, which was right in my backyard, and just seemed like the right time to try and work back into full-time work. So that's been the last 6.5 years I've been working at Yarra Ranges Council, and then I've progressed to actually now lead that team that I was signed into. So I lead now a team of 8 people. And then in the last 12 months, which is a really weird connection, I've absorbed the school crossings program as well, which is not necessarily aligned to emergency management. So I actually oversee 83 staff remotely, which is it's fantastic. But it's from a community connection point of view, and a community trusted community member, that's amazing, and I love that program. So that's where I'm at. And then, of course, in the last 4 months, in part of my role, I've been playing a lead role in overseeing the response for COVID-19 for my council, which also has a response, local government has a responsibility at the local level, which we sort of municipal level, to support and the public health messaging, but also then to look at the relief and recovery needs of the community during that time. So I think that's pretty good. I think I've covered off most of it. Louise? Is that
Well, that's an expansive career, both a personal, family, and role. When you mentioned the school crossing, thank you. I did some work for, I think, Kingston Council a couple of years ago, and the question was around who do you think of the most when you think of your council? And number one was the school crossing person. Yeah. That's your interface. And then the second were librarians. So I thought that was really interesting. So you have, you're responsible for very important people.
Great. They've got great social capital, like in terms of they're a trusted adult in the community that you just sort of don't, I can't unsee them now. Like I see them all the time in obviously my kids' life, but it's that's a whole other annex of my life that's been fascinating.
Absolutely. So just say with your team, how do you influence well-being with them, given that you've mentioned staff quite regularly? How do you do that?
So it's one thing that I'm absolutely passionate about leading the whole person. And so understanding when anybody comes in to join the team that I'm a part of, or whether I'm leading them, is to understanding who they are and what their personal life is, what their family life is about, why they work choose this work. That's a question I always ask when I'm interviewing people, why this job, because I'm curious to see the passion come from within, because I want everyone to bring their whole selves to work. So understanding who they are is really key. The other part, which I think is challenging for me, is to model good wellbeing behaviour. So this last 4 to 5 months, I really haven't had much time off. And yet, but I say to my team, you need to take time off. I can see you all working busy, long hours, weekends. You need to make sure you take time off. So then I've tried to model that by saying, I will take a half day here, I'm taking a full day here. And this is all about me resting and having a break from work and looking after myself. So it's a real tension for me. I don't necessarily, this last 3 to 4 months, probably haven't done a great version of myself in terms of modelling for my team. But I'm certainly really overt with them to say that it's very important to look after yourself, that I value them being around for a long period of time, and then therefore it's important for them to take time and time away from work and then time for their family. And especially this working from home period where some of our team have had to actually also do the oversight of the schooling from home aspects as well, where we just had to discuss whatever works and the expectations of how we operate and how we work. We've had to discuss what the expectations are and how they've kind of shifted to being less about output and more about looking after yourself and more about just producing the work that you think you can do best and not necessarily stressing about everything. So that's been an interesting sort of 4 months to kind of oversee that. And of course, my whole organisation is still working from home. So I actually, not even being able to see them face to face is really difficult.
Absolutely. So you might not have seen them or been in person with them, but are there any, have you heard from your staff and teams any anecdotes of wellbeing that they've practiced from remote, being remote?
Yeah, so I've appointed someone in my team as our wellbeing officer. So Ange, who's just got this lovely style about herself and is just curious and kind, and it's her natural go-to style. She was appointed as our wellbeing officer way back when, and she happily accepted the volunteering of the role. And so we do a weekly catch-up, and then part of that is to share what we've done as part of our wellbeing. So some things are as simple as instead of doing a Zoom call, doing a phone call, but actually doing it while you go for a walk. So you're actually fitting in your physical activity. So when we were hearing back that everybody was feeling tired from sitting down and being on Zoom a lot or interacting, collaborating through this platform, that we spoke about how other ways we could do that. So that was one way to integrate work into still having some wellbeing activities. So doing some physical activity, that was one. Another one is we've done a Daggy Disco session where you just turn off your screens, but one of our team members plays some music and you have to just dance, commit to dance. Period of time. Right. So you can have your screens on and still do it. So it's just a way of just, shaking it up and doing it differently. We've had what we call quarantine quizzes. So just sharing around like a bit of a quiz, which is, revealing some, special favourite child films. So it's just sharing some really lovely personal kind of bits of information about ourselves. So, yeah, so it's been a really generous way of just connecting with one another and then getting to know a bit more about each other and how we're going.
That's great. Hey, I'm curious for those that are with us today. Has anyone else been appointed the wellbeing officer in their team, or would they do that now? Oh, that's a fantastic idea. So simple. And did Ange volunteer?
I was in a one-on-one catch-up with Ange and I said, look, I've got this idea. We're about to go off to work remotely now. I can see this is coming. But I want to know how we remain connected. And I sort of said, you've got such a lovely style about you. I've got this idea that we appoint someone. I don't have the time. I won't have the time. So I want to appoint someone from within the team to be able to do that. And I was hoping she'd sort of put her hand up. And she did. She sort of said, I'd love to do that. She said, that's my thing. And I went, yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
That's great.
So she'll now know my secret way of operating if she listens into this.
Yeah. That's great. So there's a bit of commentary around that, which is great. So just a reminder that if you're doing some chat room conversation, to ensure that everyone can see it so that everyone is receiving that. So the disco has been popular as an idea. Now tell us, I was just wondering, has there been someone, Lisa, that you've worked with that triggered this interest in your self-care and well-being? Was there a role model or a mentor along the lines?
That's a really good question, Louise. I don't know that I could pinpoint it to any one person. I think, as I said in my intro, I think really probably back in 2009, I probably saw the importance of it.
Yeah.
And was seeing well, the impact of people, and I think I've spoken to you before about this. You get into a work mode of adrenaline. You work in an adrenaline mode, and so you're really not conscious and aware of because you feel fantastic and you're thriving, but you can't sustain an adrenaline mode for a very long period of time. So I think it was probably no one in particular, more around just seeing it in my peers and seeing it in myself, the need to actually look after myself. So there was no one real person, no.
Okay. It's always interesting to know if there was a pivotal, person that, that somewhere in your life, be it family, community or work, that can help out. Look, tell us, I think we really need to delve into, be it your recent role with COVID, about community and your involvement and what's happening, because we generally talk about the well-being of the person, and I think taking it up a notch about the well-being of the community. What's happening there?
So part of our work in the last 3 to 4 months since since February. So we kicked off trying to understand the impacts, and so so in local government we had 2 roles: a public health role, so to support the community to take on board and understand the impacts and the public health restrictions that were being put in place. And then there's a public health piece around making sure that through our immunisation programs that we can support people to be their healthiest, to be able to sustain through the actual flu season, things like that. So there was a public health stream, but then there's also an impact stream. So we call it impact assessment in emergency management speak, but it's actually going out and surveying communities, so key groups, so youth, aged communities, our Indigenous communities, and understanding how they're coping and what sort of they're seeing as terms of the impacts of a pandemic, which we've never experienced before. And that's really important to be able to assess how are people attributing the behaviours or their psychological, their mental health, and also their physical health to this. So it was real fear. So when warnings come out to say for people over 70 to isolate and not to go out, that's a huge that puts barriers up for people to be able to connect in a healthy way to community. So how can we go about supporting them? So initially it was just to understand how our communities were being impacted by that. Doing some really proactive outreach and connecting with those vulnerable groups. So through, so primarily we were targeting Indigenous youth, businesses, as well as aged people. So understanding the social impacts, but then also there was huge economic impacts once businesses started sort of shutting down and people started working from home, and the idea of what was essential started to kind of shift how people went about their work, and then people started to lose jobs as well. So that was the sort of foundation piece, and then the last sort of subsequent to that was trying to sort of build the narrative. What we're seeing from the federal government is these great national stimulus packages, but nothing that really sort of spoke to the community of Yarra Ranges, which is a really sort of has a couple of urban townships right on the fringe of outer eastern Melbourne, and then primarily is rural and hills. It's the Dandenong sort of thing. So it's forested areas. So it's a very sort of peri-urban air environment. And trying to then advocate for our community around those stimulus packages. Well, they're actually not doing what they need to be doing. There's a gap. There's some people that are missing out. And then how are we supporting them to be able to do that? At the same time, actually advocating for the great work that's being done. So seeing work that was being done within the community and how they've adapted to that. So groups that were really vulnerable. So when we have community services that provide food packages and food parcels, when they provide community meals to people in our community, being able to still do that, but do it under a public health frame. So being able to support those groups to keep going, just keep the most vulnerable people still connected and getting their basic needs met. So things like a community cafe in the Warburton township, just no longer running a cafe, but then offering a takeaway service. So people coming to pick up their meals and going, still having an element of connection, but actually sort of moving away. So still being able to keep an eye on people. The Meals on Wheels, some of our volunteers couldn't even volunteer, but then we were able to provide a surge in volunteers of people who wouldn't normally volunteer for Meals on Wheels. So being able to support those at most need of being able to have their needs at home and still connect with the service, but then also supporting the volunteers and trying to help them do it through an outreach. So they did phone outreach from home instead of doing actually other ways. So it's really complex. A pandemic, when it comes to emergency management, is not a common activity. And we've spoken before, obviously, bushfires is more regular, especially in Victoria, more frequent. So the pandemic and the public health impacts has been a really fascinating space to navigate and understand how to keep our communities sustaining themselves in the best way they can.
So just on the volunteers, for example, you mentioned the Meals on Wheels. I think that volunteering is a fantastic wellbeing exercise. It ticks so many boxes. So how many volunteers did you attract in your area?
Oh, I can't give you an exact number. What I can tell you though is that we, so the Meals on Wheels team takes sort of like 300 meals, I think, a week. I'm trying to work out the numbers. I'm sorry, I'm so caught up in data. I don't necessarily know all the specifics. And so we may have dropped maybe sort of, let's say, half of our volunteers that were at the age category, and then to be able to pull them in from a volunteer connection. So Eastern Volunteers is a network connection. We said we need help to be able to still do that. And they said that they were able to attract volunteers very quickly just through the needs. So we often see spontaneous volunteers peak when our communities are at most in need. So post disasters, you'll see that for floods and for fire, and it's been the same example here for the pandemic. I probably can't talk to you specifically about numbers, Louise, but what I can tell you is that of that cohort, there are people that wouldn't normally put their hand up to volunteer in other circumstances. So it's been great to be able to connect them, and then the value and the anecdotal feedback from them is that it's a feel good. You're giving your time, but actually the reward is actually seeing the benefit of your time and giving to others.
It definitely is, isn't it? And we might not normally categorise volunteering as well-being, but as I said, and it ticks so many boxes about, be it physical to get you out doing something different, social, as you've mentioned, and mentally, to think not about yourself but to think of others. So it's a great. Did I notice in your background that you yourself volunteered in your past?
Yeah, I'm a huge volunteer. So I currently volunteer on the Environment Advisory Committee for my area, and then I also was a volunteer with the CFA for a number of years. And then, like any good parent, I was a volunteer on the toy library. So done a lot of volunteering in my time. And even my partner's sort of the president of the basketball club. So we're hugely about connecting with our community and giving back to the community that we participate in and live amongst. There's such value in just creating it creates a new social network we wouldn't expose yourself to, which is great.
So interesting. So Nosh is one of our frequent flyers as a participant, Lisa. So, and he's mentioned, I just saw it quickly on the screen, that I volunteered for 10 years. I'd be interested, I'd say most of the people tuning in or zooming in volunteer as well. So it'd be great to see what you do as examples through the chat room.
I think Victoria leads the country in per capita for volunteering. Just as a quick stat, in terms of for whatever reason, and that can be a small amount of hours per week to doing it sort of 3 to 4 days a week. So we actually are sorry to say that to other people from other states, but
yes, we're all of Australia.
But also Australia's known for its volunteering national, and like in terms of its part of its ethos, it's got a strong volunteering ethos. I think is a culture.
Yeah, it's such a great point, isn't it? What is it about Australians? Yeah. So then, okay, so I know that it's been a struggle, say, the last few months to practice your well-being, but if a video camera was following you around for a day, what would we see you doing at the moment, given how busy you are?
So I think it would have to be the start of the day where I do just 20 minutes of online yoga. So literally I get out of bed, out in my pajamas. I don't even bother to get changed. And just quickly do there's a couple of local yoga studios doing online classes. So I've signed up for a couple of those to support them, and then also to do that. So I just do them for 20 minutes, not long. So I don't actually dedicate a long time, but it makes me, sort of starts my day really nicely. Other days, if I don't do the yoga, then I'm taking the dog out for a quick, literally 10-minute walk. As part of our ISO part, we actually adopted a rescue dog too, Bella. She may appear, but she hasn't today. So that's also, she's been really good for us in terms of that. So that would be another aspect. And then I'm pretty much sitting at my desk for the day. But what I try and do now, and I've really been cognizant of in the last month, is to actually block out a half-hour break in my calendar, of my Outlook calendar, to make sure that people don't book over work time. So at that time I just go for a walk. So we obviously live on the trail of a local creek, and it's literally 100 metres from our house, so I can be able to do that without too much effort. So that's it. And then I'm trying to eat well. I think initially I wasn't eating great to begin with the whole working and sort of being at home. And then just eating, better choices. So making sure that, eggs has been my go-to meal, like in terms of just a boiled egg, scrambled egg, like how easy and quick are they? They're brilliant. So that's been good. And then really switching off at night. So literally at 5:30, shutting down the computer and the phone and just trying to switch off as best I can. Again, I wasn't great at the beginning because the work I was doing was just so reactive and responsive, and needed sort of full time, and needed to continue to do that. And I was doing both roles, my everyday role as well as my AM activation role, so leading emergency management COVID team. So yeah, it's been a mix. But I would say the last month I've sort of I'm finding my routine a bit more easier. So yeah.
And that's what it is, isn't it? Having that routine, as you said, Lisa, at the beginning of the day, once you start the routine with, your example, the yoga, it's then easy to to follow it through. But if you don't start your day, that can actually affect the remaining day of activities.
Yeah, the only other thing I should say, which is sort of funny, and I get dressed for work every day. So I'm wearing work clothes today. So I haven't slid into the tracksuit pants scenario yet. And it was funny, in one of our wellbeing catch-ups with my team, they were speaking about, for some reason. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm getting dressed for work every day. So I think there's also a wellbeing aspect for me around, the reason I do that is because when I get to the weekend, I will put on my tracksuit, or I'll put on my, whatever, leggings, and just then literally switch off. So for me there's almost the dress rehearsal kind of component around dressing for the role that I'm participating in that day. So that's
interesting. Yeah, I've heard different.
Sorry,
so go ahead.
No, we had a question on that from Susie, saying, do you actually find that you're working harder from home than you would in the office?
I have been, but then that's because the environment, the role I've taken on with COVID has just been ridiculously busier than normal. So what I would call my normal role, I don't know what that would look like. So since being working from home, I've been in this activation role where I've had to oversee an emergency management team remotely, which has just been very, very different. Never done that before. Normally you do that face-to-face in a collaborative way. So I've absolutely been working harder from home. And we were talking before to just the fatigue from being on Zoom is a real factor, and knowing that has an impact, I've just had to really shift away again in the last month. Good question.
Yeah, I was saying to Lisa, so I'm in the middle of a 2-day workshop, and yesterday I was just exhausted. I cannot explain how tired I was and fatigued I was, but I worked out that I don't think I drank enough water yesterday because I had all the screens and lights around me, and just the importance of just having water, but the importance of just turning off the screen. And I went to bed early, but we really need to be careful, don't we, to have those little rules in place to switch off. Now, going back to the clothing, a few people have talked about that. And I wonder if it's an emotional trigger that we have on, how do you feel when you're casually dressed, and how do you feel when you are in your kind of whatever your work clothes are, which, you know, could be an overall or could be a suit. So yeah, I wonder how that plays out and how you feel different and what emotions, you know, that triggers.
I've often reflected on this, Louise. I'm not too sure, and I don't know that I can pinpoint it in particular, but I'll take back to when I was actually started my working from home consultancy years ago. There was something about, you know, you'd do a few hours here and then I'd go off and pick up the kids from school. So I remember speaking to a mentor at the time about when you're working from home, that you need to focus on you are working, so act like a professional. So I'm wondering whether it's carried from there, but I'm really pleased I still do it, because there's something about putting on makeup, just going through my normal getting ready for work routine that gets me ready for work. So I think there's something about that for me personally. I don't know that I'm saying it has to be for everybody, but it certainly has allowed this shift. And when I get to the weekend, the actual choice to choose casual clothing that's more my weekend clothing I think has a real psychological kind of impact. So for me, it does work, really.
Yeah, I think that's it. And as you said, routine again, having a routine really helps us perform. Hey, Claire, any commentary around that point? I just noticed a few things popping up on the screen about clothing.
Yeah, so Louise Scott, she said top half nice, bottom half comfy, and I agree. So I think maybe a bit of a combination of, you know, how do you look to someone else versus, you know, like I've still got my slippers on, so so that's maybe a good approach for some people as well.
Nice, Louise.
And yeah, Estelle saying like what you said, Lisa, it's the change in the clothes reframes the space. So you're in work and then the screen goes off and you get changed and that's the end of it.
Yeah, good, Estelle, I like that.
Yeah, and again, Susie said it's about being present for the day and showing up for yourself.
Yeah.
There is that tendency to just be comfy, but are you then in the right frame of mind? So there's a lot of people saying the same. There was also a question about well-being. So from Estelle again, have you thought about well-being for when you return to your pre-COVID routine? If there is such a if there is such a routine.
Oh, that's a really good question. I probably haven't thought about it, but what I will say is I sort of, before COVID, for Christmas I got a voucher to buy a new bike. I've had my old bike for 20 years, and I said to myself, I want a new one. And since COVID, and because we've had to stick to kind of physically exercising locally, I've got into bike riding on our local trails. So I reckon that'll continue. That's actually been something for my partner and I to really do together, and I'm loving that, and exploring spaces that we don't normally explore. The new bike makes me feel fitter than what my old bike did, because it's lighter and better and faster. And so I think that's something I hadn't done before. So I think that will be something new that I've taken up in the current environment that I'll continue. Yoga is something I've always done, but I've never done it online before. So that, I think, a mix up of online and classes will be good to continue. Yeah, that's a great question around how to compare what happens after. Good idea. Yeah.
There's also a suggestion, a Brompton bike, says Nosh. They're very portable, apparently.
Oh, nice. I've already invested. Too late.
Yeah, another 20 years.
That's right.
So Lisa, you mentioned your partner before and potentially are riding together around those what sounds like gorgeous tracks. How has your wellbeing routine practice impacted the rest of the people in your, I don't know, your home or your circle?
I'm laughing because it's just such a mix. So, and I'm also conscious because the rest of my family is now arriving into my house from their day after my school, my daughter. Oh, look, I think it's been a challenge at times, and at other times it's been great. So we've had great, because we've been home, I have 3 children that have actually grown up. So one's 21, 20 and 17, about to be 18. And so more often on weekends, they're all out and gone doing other things normally. So during COVID, we've actually spent a lot of time together, and we've done jigsaw puzzles, played board games. I bought one of those sad table tennis nets to go on our dining table so we can play table tennis. We've actually, standing around actually our kitchen island having a drink with our kids, like we're at some sort of bar. It's just weird. But it's all been great. And, you know, they're happy to participate. They go off and do their own thing in their own bedrooms and catch up with friends online and things like that. But that's been really good. I think that's been wonderful. The challenges, I think I was saying before, is that there's 5 of us in our household and 5 of us have been at home, and finding the space to be able to work effectively. My partner makes chocolate. He works for a very big chocolate company. So he's just been just as busy as I have. So we've actually been both of us have been in a high stressed work state for a number of weeks, and we've really had to kind of look after each other and take care of one another. So that's been a really overt effort. We sort of sat down and spoke about that, the fact that it's having an impact. We need to look after one another, and we call each other, you know, be each other's sort of caretaker, for want of a better term. Sleep, actually really been calling each other on better sleep. So sleep's been one of the aspects that we need to kind of focus on. So just making sure that we're sort of winding down, switching off, no devices. I think that's been another aspect, but it's been good. I do laugh because I had to buy my husband some earbuds because we share the same space and he was too loud on Zoom. So that's one of the marriage challenges we've had. It's been funny.
Yeah, we experienced that as well. Competition. Somehow when you put these in, you somehow appear louder. So given all of your experiences and the relationships that you have, what are you really thankful for? What gratitude do you have that because of those experiences?
My health. I think my optimism. I despite the ups and the downs that go on, I still think that people say to me, "You're still smiling." So I'm an optimistic person. My family. So I'm really lucky to still have all of my family. Both my immediate family, my parents are still alive. They're quite active, and they're my connection to my friends. So. And then finally, I think, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I enjoy the work that I do. So I enjoy the life that I have. So I feel very fortunate, really, really fortunate.
What's next for you then?
A holiday? I don't know. I think that's a really good question, Louise. So what I will say to this audience, about 3 weeks ago, I sat in on a meeting where they spoke about that our valley, so around the Yarra River and around the Watts River, is about to experience a 1 in 100 year flood. So I'm just getting ready for a flood for this winter. The winter's going to be a very wet winter, and they're expecting it to be major flooding across some of our patches. So that's my next kind of little focus that'll be happening. But no, I don't know. I sort of probably have been so in it this year. It's probably been a bit too much, but I think there's probably in the next 12 months to 2 years, there's an opportunity to look up and look out, and to maybe look beyond my role with local government, maybe to see what else there is. Yeah.
Who's listening into this? Who might be hearing? And I'm going to ask you one more question. And so, Claire, if you could just remind everyone that they've got an opportunity now to ask Lisa questions, so we can get you to guide us through the chat room. So what would be your top 3 tips for us, given your experience, Lisa? What are your top 3 for our wellbeing?
I've, in reflecting on this question, I've listened into the other one, so I don't know that I've got any great wisdoms, but what I was thinking about, what I could add value to, I'm going to call it wellbeing first aid. And when those times when you just don't think you've got the energy to provide something, Joy spoke last week about giving yourself permission to have self-care, and sometimes you're in the trenches and you feel like you just can't. You just don't, or you can't. So my 3 is really around wellbeing first aid. So, and I'm just going to say 20 minutes in your day, you can do 10-minute power nap that actually gives you energy and just focus. That can happen. And you can find that it can be in the car before you pick up the kids from school. It can be in the car before you even go into work. I don't know, but essentially a 10-minute power nap will give you amazing sort of aspects, and sleep is the key. You know, there's no surprises here. 10-minute exercise. So I do yoga. So a salute to the sun, doing that 3 times takes less than 10 minutes, and that is a full body workout. Done. do that. And so sometimes when I don't feel like getting out of the bedroom, going into the lounge room, I will do a salute to the sun next to my bed because I just want to hop back in. So that's 10 minutes and it's done. And I feel like I've done some exercise. And then finally, eating well. So find a 10-minute meal. So my tip, I'm going to give you mine: frozen spinach, frozen peas, pasta, ricotta, and some mint from the garden, or if you haven't got mint. Throw them all in together and you've got a meal and you feel good about yourself. Pasta takes 10 minutes. You throw in the frozen spinach and frozen peas, you're done. Maybe a bit of garlic. So that in 20 minutes, you've done the trilogy of well-being, which is sleep, exercise, and eating well. And I'll just say that's sort of where I've been at my worst and been down on myself. I've really had to find just some little gems of time to do that. So I call that well-being first aid, really. And then ultimately for me, connection. So social connection, I know it's a fourth, sorry, but social connection is really important. So when you're feeling down, reach out to somebody and you feel like you need to have a laugh or connect with a friend. That's really good.
I'm stuck on the salute to the sun. I know it, but do you think everyone else knows what that means?
No,
Can you
yeah.
just show us?
So no, it's hard in this. So a salute to the sun is a really simple, you can actually YouTube it, I'm sure, but even squats, even 10 minutes of squats or a 2-minute plank or something like that. It's just, what I'm saying is you may not be able to find 30 minutes a day, but if you're feeling down and out, you can find 10 minutes. A simple one, sometimes even when I go outside, I just walk up and down the back steps off our deck just to kind of get my heart rate up and do something like that. But for me, the salute to the sun is a really simple one that I know can do without effort. Yeah. Sorry,
Great.
Louise.
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, Claire, questions? What have we had asked?
So we're loving the meal ideas. I'm going to have to type that up in the email because people want to make it. So thank you.
I think that might be a first. I don't know if we've actually had a recipe. That's great.
Thank you that it was quick as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's not from Louise, it's from Jenny. Who is or who are your mentors during isolation?
So I have, and this is something I've done over the last 12 to 18 months, I've built up a trusted network of peers and people. So they are both mentors and peers of mine to reach out to. So work related and then personal. So when I've kind of find work days challenging, just a text or a quick phone call to a couple of those. So, and they're people that I trust and who will be open and honest and frank with me about whatever it is. And I think this is just not just necessarily COVID, but I think in life, it's good to have some trusted peers to go to sound off, to vent with, and to kind of provide the support that you need in that time. So, but that's something that I've done for my own leadership purpose. But at this time, I've found it to be really, really vital.
Great. There's also a lot of love for you, Lisa, from maybe some of your friends that have joined. Amalia is listening.
Oh, thanks,
the fan club.
Oh,
yeah.
geez. It's embarrassing.
And also a lot of respect for the school patrol teams in the community. So that obviously ticks a lot of boxes for people. And then there's a few, Jeanette and a few others saying, you know, the when people talk about the COVID work world, for a lot of us, that work life has been remote for 20 years. Obviously not with a farm or without a farm, you know, there's lots of different remote kind of work. So yeah, just a lot of, you know, thank you for the tips on bringing a new element to that as well. Push-ups on the kitchen bench is a good quick exercise too, apparently.
Great one.
There's also a lot of, from me, I've got a 2 and a 4-year-old, so maybe I'll leave it a few years, but having drinks with your kids in the kitchen is a really mature thing. A lot of people are saying great parenting style because you're taking the fun, you know, they're not going to go out drinking as much because you're doing it at home with them. So that's actually a really mature approach as well. And yeah, just a lot of love for what you're saying and what you're doing. Our power naps are very popular as well, it seems.
And I'll just say, I corrected somebody today in a meeting who called it a nana nap, and I said no, it's not. It's a power nap, because what it does, it gives you energy. It's so important to you. I sort of sadly, I think, told them off. But I think it's an important thing. It's a really, I did it since kids were little, so it's something that I've carried through for a good 21 years.
Well, how do you then do that, Lisa? How do you get into that sleep, whatever time it is during the day? What do you do to fall into a sleep?
Again, it's a little routine. So just a space with a bit of white noise, so the radio on the background. Heat pack. So because in winter it's toasty. And then just find a comfy space. It doesn't have to be my bed. It can be a couch. I used to do it in the car before I picked the kids up from school.
It's okay.
So yeah, whatever. So, and I just tell myself, I'm just closing my eyes. I don't say I'm having a sleep, but essentially you go into that kind of quasi sort of not a complete sleep. So, and it's just enough. And if you're worried about not waking up in time, you can put an alarm on. But I think over time I've finessed it. I can do it for 10 to 15, but it just gives you that boost. That siesta. It's siesta that other cultures do.
Exactly. So it's it's more that we're odd, I suppose, not doing it as a normal kind of practice. What haven't I asked you, Lisa? What is it that is pearls of wisdom there that in our short time? What haven't I asked you that is really important to leave with us?
I really like that point around gratitude. I just sort of think, and this is something that sort of I've become sort of mindful of in the last 10 years, I think when we look at our existence, this is going to become very philosophical, but when we look at our existence on Earth and how long humans have been here compared to Earth itself and how long we're here for, sometimes I think we take ourselves way too seriously, and just to step back and remember that, whatever you're going through, it will move on to something else. And I think the term, this too shall pass, is a lovely phrase around there will be something else that will come around the corner for you. And so I'm always optimistic that no matter how stressful and how crappy a day or a moment might feel, that you will come out at the end of the day. And as I said, look up and look out for others to be able to do that. So optimism, I think, is something that we sort of underestimate and possibly undervalue in terms of our own well-being, underlying well-being.
I love what you just said then about look up and look out. We do get caught up in our own world, don't we? And we can then become quite pessimistic about matters. So just to be able to see the other side is a great message for all of us. Do we have any other questions there, Claire?
We did have one from Jenny about meditating. So you mentioned yoga and napping. Do you use that time to meditate as well?
I'm not very good at meditation, but I love meditation at the end of my yoga sessions. So the yoga sessions I do online, that 20 minutes or so, there's about 2 to 3 minutes of meditation of that. And then there's meditation in my normal pre-COVID when I go face-to-face classes. So I really enjoy that. I think I've just probably not practiced at it. And so, yes, I'm not anti-meditation. I'm probably just not really very clever at it. Oh, yeah, meditation for 30 seconds. I like that idea.
Yeah, so nauseous men. Anyone else? What Nosh is suggesting? Anyone else practice meditation? Nosh is offering to lead it.
Yeah,
cool.
I haven't been able to do meditation. I have tried a few times. So,
but it can be simple breathing, I think, can't it? For 30 seconds, it's just about simple breathing as well, just to be present.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconception about you have to be fully in another world or whatever, and actually you can dip into it quite easily. It's different for everyone, I guess.
So Helen just said she had to go, so thanks for being involved. Thanks, Helen. That's great. Helen. I know that a few people are on tight time frames. Yeah, that's we should look into the meditation with who's a practitioner of meditation would be useful. Okay, so we've got a couple more minutes to go before we turn off the recording. Are you okay, Lisa, to hang after 2 o'clock for about 10 minutes if there's anyone wanting to ask a more direct question to you? And Claire, you'll be able to provide the mic to those who would like to speak directly. You can offer the camera, but we have put people in a position where they're not ready for the camera, so just check on that first, because you know that I'll have to fly.
Yeah, that's fine.
Lisa, this has been really great. I'm really interested again in more information around, our folk that have been affected by the bushfire, the impact of COVID in our communities. We don't look up and out enough just to know what's happening, and and volunteering, if we all could do a bit more, it would be such an even better society that we live in. So thank you very much. It's been great to have you as our 13th guest on our series of episodes. Now, Claire, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just a bit of advertising. Who's next week? Episode number 14.
14, yeah. So we've got